This call is being recorded.
Hello.
Hello, hi, this is Zinara.
Yes, hi Ali. This is Zunara from Create Unis. How are you?
Good, how are you? How was your weekend?
The weekend was great. How about yourself?
Good, it wasn't bad.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, and so how's everything else going at your end in terms of, your work and the job search process, which I know can be a lot more tedious?
Yeah, it's going great. I actually haven't started like applying or job searching. It's just like something I like recently like talked to my friend and like let me just get back into it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's about it.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. Okay, and thank you so much for filling that questionnaire as much as you could. And I've seen
Yeah,
that you have filled a lot of it. And but then you just sent me that questionnaire. I think like more than half an hour ago, and I just got a chance to look at it, and so I
yeah.
couldn't really go through it
Okay,
properly. But then
okay.
thank you so much for filling it out because now I know that I have this information with me while I'm preparing your files.
Uh-huh.
And so but again, I would like to have some input from you to just
Okay,
get to know things about the sort of work you were doing in all of these positions.
okay.
Okay, and so yeah, and you haven't. Okay,
Yes.
and okay, just I was just going over the career gaps and the reasons for them.
Yep. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so in terms of your target position, because the one that you have shared is the strategy associate at Capital One, and
Yeah.
then you have mentioned on your LinkedIn profile that the sort of positions that you are really looking forward to are more into helping companies with management consultancy and stuff like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
can I get to know more about your target roles first? Because there's only one to take help from. So, if you could guide me more about the sort of positions that you are really into and that that really attract you at the moment.
hmm Yeah, like for now, most of what I'm looking at is probably like around consulting in the financial industry, or
Mm-hmm.
and if someone thing is related to like what I do right now, like even audit work, like internal audit, that's like fine too. That's like one of the areas I can look into. So
Mm-hmm.
it's mostly around that same kind of job that I'm looking at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. And so you have marked the terms financial insight and analytical support as read, that to say that you are not familiar with it. But the way when I read your resume and the sort of minor analysis that you are already conducting for the company or that you have
Mm-hmm.
conducted in the past, can
Mm-hmm.
we say that it's not completely fine to say that you are not familiar with it? It's just that probably we can say that you are not really an expert in it, but you have familiarity.
Yeah, like most of the key terms in that job description, I was familiar with, but the reason I selected
Mm-hmm.
those is more like how it means regarding that position rather than like a general view. Like
Mm-hmm.
I had some
Oh, okay.
idea about
Yeah.
what that means, but I was like more with that job description. Like I was, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Apart from that, I'm like most familiar with most of the terms in that description. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Okay, and so if we start discussing your current position as the payment quality assurance compliance analyst at the Universal Services Administrative Company, and so in the description of, when I asked about your job responsibilities, you have mentioned your role of testing procedures. So, can you tell me a bit more about this role, like when we say certification testing? So, what sort of certificates are you actually testing and the significance of all these testings?
hmm So the certification testing is something that is assigned by the FCC, and mostly it involves that the company that we're auditing right now, that they have done the certification where there's an agreement that all the facilities, etc., or the networks that have been established are like up to date by like certain
Mm-hmm.
it depends on the year. So if we're testing like for 2018, like it must be shown that they're certified by 2017 of October. So if they're not, then either they have to prove that a waiver was granted by the FCC. Otherwise, then we have to like
Mm-hmm.
identify that as an exception. So
Okay.
yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Okay, and so then testing is done for category 1.3 loops. So,
hmm
what does this 1.3 loops include?
So for those, that is a number of exchanges slash lines that fall in within that state where they're operating.
Mm-hmm.
So it includes a lot of like residential networks, single line business networks, and then multi-line business networks with number of lines that are in that state that are offering the internet service. So that has to
Mm-hmm.
reconcile with what they send to USAC in our database. So if it doesn't match up
Mm-hmm.
or the lines are like off by 10 lines or 20 lines, then we take that as an exception.
Okay.
Yeah. And then if they include like test lines, then that's an exception as well, which should not be there. That should be excluded.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, and then in terms of tools, you have mentioned Microsoft Excel. Okay, to completing testing procedure. Okay, and using SharePoint to pose questions to the high cost department. So, what sort of questions are we talking about here?
So it usually depends for, let me see. So if there's a variance or something we cannot reconcile, so if it's the
Mm-hmm.
1.3 loops or the depreciation or high cost loop, we reach out to the carrier, so that's separate. But for the high
Mm-hmm.
cost department in USAC, that includes testing for CAF ICC, where we're not able to reconcile the total revenue that's assigned or the disbursement that's given out. And then so we reach
Mm-hmm.
out to program where they have like additional data that they send to us, or uh, they can send us information that why it's not reconciling, and then we go on from there. or for even for certification testing. Like in one instance, what happened was for like two carriers of mine, two cases of mine, they submitted certification after October, and then we needed a public order. And then so we reached out to program where we like submitted a request that do we have verification or like a public notice that supports that they can submit it by deadline, or the deadline was extended. So then they send us like public notices or an update in the template, and then we just include it in our work papers.
Okay. Okay, that's understandable.
Yeah.
And you also use a program created by an outside vendor called iSight, which is used to quantify your findings in the software. Okay.
Yeah. So
And so
for
was their software already there? Yeah.
I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just asking that was that software already there, that program when you joined the company, or was that something that was created while you were there?
It was already there. It's an old version was there where like all our cases are uploaded by the external vendor, and then or business analyst that works at USAC. And what we do is we quantify the testing procedures in there, whether it's an exception or there's not an exception, and then when was documentation received or what documentation we have got from the carrier. So we use that to keep track of like where we are in the for the cases, and then through iSight we send out emails, etc. to the carrier, so there's like a record in there for the carrier. And then after we submit our cases with exception or without an exception, that gets sent to the FCC for review.
Okay.